Welcome back. Today we're going to tie a Quill Gordon dry fly. This was one of my favorite flies to tie as a kid. I don't know what it was, probably the segmentation that you get off of the Peacock curl that really, I don't know, drew me to this pattern. And it was the first dry fly that I ever learned how to tie. So back home, East Coast Midwest, this is a popular pattern in the spring. Typically March, April time frame. You're gonna have your Quill Gordon's gonna be one of your big patterns that you're fishing a lot is on the dry and wet fly world. And then you get a pretty good spinner hatch with them as well, with some egg sacs and everything. They can keel on those pretty heavily at times. I'll tie one of those here. In the months to come, I'll get into one of those probably. But I'm going to tie this today on a 14. 14 and 16s are the sizes that I tie it in. You'll most likely see them in a 16. Central Pennsylvania, you're going to see those mostly in 16s. Occasionally you'll see them a little bit bigger, but for the most part, 16s is what I ran into. But I'm going to tie it on 14. It's a little bit easier to pick up on the camera, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So to get started on this, we just have a standard dry fly hook, and we're going to get a thread base down on it. We're going to take that back to the barb of the hook, just a quick thread base, nothing too complex there. And I'm going to find some done Hackle fibers, and I'm going to use that for my tail. Just strip a couple of those back. Pull those right out to the side, and we'll set these in. I'm probably somewhere in the 6 to 8 ballpark for the amount of fibers that I have here. And then I have to wet that down. That one just wants to fly all over the place. So I'm just going to set these in. They're not as even as I would like them to be. Not as even, so we're going to take some new ones here. We're just going to stand this right out to the side. Make sure that everything's nice and even, and then just pinch those off. Like I said, somewhere in the 6 to 8 range is what we're looking for. And then, yeah, that looks better. I'm going to set that in. I'm going to go about 1 1/4 times the length of my hook for the tail length. And I'm just going to set these in nice and easy. Not really wrenching down on that, not really getting too carried away. And then take that back to the ascent of the barb of the hook. And then there's your tail, just as simple as that. Now I'm going to advance this forward to tie in my wings. And for the wings, we're just going to go with some wood duck mallard flanks. Found a set that paired up pretty well, given the quality of the pack that I have here. I'm really getting down to the end of it, so finding something that matched well was pretty difficult. But then we're going to set them opposite of themselves. You can see right there it already has a nice upright and divided wing set, just like we did with the light Cahill that we did a couple of weeks back. Nothing really new on this. I don't really see a need to get real fancy with wing sets and everything. You can, I mean, it makes the flies look phenomenal, but I don't really see a need to do it like a lot of like the old school blue duns and everything, to where they would use like the mallard wings and everything. They look unbelievable. They really do look phenomenal, but I mean, you get a fish or two on them and they're all busted up, and all of the work and time that you put into making them look as good as they do seems to be wasted, because after one fish they're pretty much shot. But as far as like shadow box stuff and everything like that, can't beat it. Those things look unbelievable. So I'm just gonna set these in. I'm just gonna eyeball this for now. I got a burr of some sort on my pointer finger, and I catch it with my thread just about every time. Alright, so I'm just going to set those in, just get an idea if I'm going to like the length and everything, or the height that I'm going to get. And I think I'm pretty happy with how those are setting. So before I go any further, because these things have some gel spun on them, what I'm going to do is come to some bare hook, and I'm going to make some wraps right in front of that bare hook. That's just going to secure those into place. If I would have kept going back and tied those in, if I would have made a turn too heavy, or if I would have made one thread wrap too strong, it would have rolled those wings on me. With going on to that bare hook, it distributes where your thread wraps are at, so now not everything is on that material going straight down. So that makes it a little bit easier to control your material there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this at an angle. I'm going to lay that flat, and I'm going to cut them just short of where I tied my tail in. You can see that right there. I cut that at an angle. That's going to help me with the taper that I'm after. And we're going to get that set into place and just run that back. I'm going to take a look at this, and if there's any spots that I think need a little bit of an extra bump to even out my taper, now's the time where I'm going to do that, because we're not using You done? Alright. Good talk. We're not using dubbing. So with dubbing, you can kind of cover up some flaws on your taper that you have. Who are you yelling at out there? Who are you yelling at? When you're using a quill body or turkey box, whatever it may be, any imperfection that you have in this taper is going to be very apparent as you're going through it. So this one, like I said, being a quill body, we're going to want to make sure that our taper's good. So all we're going to do here is we're going to take a Peacock curl, and find one that's sturdy too. Don't go finding a hurl that's really really brittle. I mean, inherently these things are brittle, some of them more so than others. I mean, if you find one that's real brittle, it's likely to bust on you as you're wrapping the body. So what I'm doing now is just taking and stripping all of these fibers off of that. I'm going against the grain and just running my fingernail right against that. I'm not starting all the way up at the tip. That's the most brittle portion of it. Kind of finding that middle section right here. I've seen folks do this with erasers, and it works really well. I've never really had much success doing that, so I just kind of prep them just with my fingers as I'm doing right here. But some of the new synthetic materials that are out there, I'm telling you, I mean, you don't even know the difference between the Peacock curl and those quill bodies that are out there. They're really getting those dialed in. So I'm just taking my time, working right through this section. peeling all this stuff back. Knox, that's enough. And I'm going to make sure that I leave myself enough to work with. You don't have to peel the entire thing, but I want to make sure that I get enough of it to where I'm not going to short myself, or I'm going to make it more difficult than what it needs to be to finish this thing off. So there we go, it's really starting to clean itself up now. We're getting a pretty clean quill body there. I got just a little bit more I want to get out of there. And then I'm going to tie this in. So now I have a nice clean quill section. I'm going to cut that tip section off because, like I said, it's really brittle. And then I'm going to tie this in from the tip. So I want to start with that tip section and then going toward the butt section here in the back. So making sure that it's tied in right where my tail is set, and I'm good right there. Now before I tie in that body section, what I'm going to do is stand my wings up. I'm going to get those set. Just make a couple of nice wraps right in the front. Just get a dam of thread set in there so it's going to set your wings up for you. It's going to stand those upright. If you want to do like a cripple or something like that, you can set one wing off to the side, one standing perpendicular off of your hook, but we're just going to do these ones standard today. I did a couple of cripples in the past. I may do some more of them. I've explained, I think, the benefit of cripples and everything, especially on heavily pressured streams and rivers. Cripples can be a code breaker, honestly. But we're just going to do this one standard. Maybe later in the year, or later on at some point, I will do some cripples. So I'm just going to set these, like I said, upright and divided, and I'm just going to take a quick figure eight. Nothing too complex or nothing excessive. I'm just doing a quick figure eight through there, just to upright and divide my wings a little bit more. One of them's a little bit on, no, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I thought the one was a little bit more on the heavy side than the other, but we're in good shape right there. So upright and divided as they sit. Everything, you can see how it's standing straight up and down for us. Everything's looking pretty good. And then one last thing before I wrap the body. Actually, I'm going to wrap the body on this one before I put my hackle in. I'm going to wrap the body on this one. Before I wrap the body though, I am going to take just a little bit of zap and I'm just going to touch my thread. Just slightly, gives me a little bit of extra security, because like I said before, these things are very brittle. You get a tooth in there and it's gonna unravel on you and that fly's gonna come apart. But that little bit of extra security with that zap really helps this fly stay together for you. So we're just going to work our way forward, one wrap in front of the other, making sure that you keep good coverage throughout the entirety. You're not going to have any gaps or anything. Making sure that your quill stays on the same plane throughout the entirety of this. It's not kicking to one side or the other, and you're not going to have a kink in the body. And then we're just going, like I said, one wrap right in front of the next. Another benefit of having that zap down there is as I'm getting closer to the end of this quill, if it slips out of my hands or if it slips from between my fingers, it's not going to unravel all the way back to the tail. I may lose 1 or 2 wraps. And I got a gap right there. There we go. I may lose a wrap or 2, as I did right there, but it's not going to go the whole way back to the tail when I have to start over. So I'm just going to grab some Hackle pliers here and make life a little bit easier on myself. There we go, just 1 wrap right in front of the next. And like I said earlier, if you have bumps or anything, or if you have a bad taper, this is where it's going to be very apparent and it's going to really stick out. So making sure that you have a good taper before you wrap your body is paramount. Look at that big word I used. My teachers would be proud of me. I think I even used it in context properly as well. So then we're just going to take a quick spin on this, make sure that we don't have any gaps or anything throughout any of that portion in the back. That tail's a little bit webby. I probably could have used some stiffer barbs on that one, but that's alright. We'll live with it. So now we have our wings set upright and divided. I really don't like that tail. There we go. I guess that's all right. And then we're going to go into our hackle now. I'm going to take about a size 16. It may even be closer to an 18, to be honest with you. It's probably a 16. But like I said before in a lot of my dry fly videos, on the Catskill style, I undersize my bodies, or undersize my hackle. On a parachute style, I oversize them. I just like these being as close to the surface film as possible, and I don't like them riding really high. So I undersize my hackle on the majority of my dry flies tied in this style. So now I'm just cleaning this up a little bit, making sure that I don't have a big drop off from where I tied my hackle in, because remember, all of our thread wraps where we captured our wings and everything, our thread wraps and the bulk of our, how do I want to explain that? Our bulk is all from our wings back. So you need to build that thread dam up in the front, because if you don't, when you're wrapping your hackle, you're going to have nice clean up and down thread wraps, and when you get to that front portion, there's a huge drop off. You'll go from there to a dang near bare hook, and your hackle, what it's going to do, when you wrap it, it's going to fall forward like that. And when it falls forward, you wind up trapping it with your wraps that follow it. So making sure that you put that thread dam right there to where you have a pretty nice transition at this point right there is something that you want to make sure that you do on these dry flies. So now, before I finish, or before I wrap that hackle, what I'm going to do is take just a little bit of dubbing, brown, black, gray, whichever color you want to go with. I got brown here because it was the first one that I found in my mess of Superfine that I have underneath there. And really thin ropes, really thin through here, and I just want to cover up my white thread. Even if I'm using a tone of thread that matches the body, I'm still adding this dubbing because it does help with that transition that I talked about earlier, and it allows your hackle wraps to be a lot cleaner. So I'm going to move my wings out of the way, and I'm going to get 2 to 3 wraps behind my wings, and then I want 3 to 4 right in the front. You can see how my hackle wraps, like I was explaining earlier, they're staying one right in front of the next, and they're not kicking to one side or they're not kicking forward because I built that thread up in front of my wings. So right like so, we're sitting pretty good. Before I go, that tail's bugging me. Before I whip finish this, I'm just gonna peel this back. I'm gonna peel my hackle back. Set that right like so. I'll throw that one off to the side for a fly later. And then I'm just gonna make a whip finish right here in front of my eye, making sure that my eye's nice and clean. Everything's sitting good right there. I've got a nice clean eye, and then I'm gonna cut my thread off and get this out of my way. So, as you can see, me personally, when I do my dry flies, I don't like heavy hackle. I'm gonna just touch that white thread up just slightly right there, and we're good on the underneath side. I don't like real heavy hackle. You'll see some of this stuff. I mean, the ones that I looked at back in the day were like out of Cabela's or Orvis magazines or whatever. You really don't see those too much. Those mailers don't go out much these days. But like a lot of the commercial flies that you see, they'll be packed so heavy with hackle. There's probably close to 10 wraps on that body portion on that hackle, and it just, I don't like them real heavy. I like them just the way that this is right here. Probably 5 to 6 wraps max is what I like on these dry flies that are in like your 12 to 18 range. You start getting on the smaller side, I'll try, and anything below 18, probably 4 wraps max. Anything above 12, maybe up to 10. But that's about it. But it's really sparse, as you can see right there. Let me make sure that that's showing through. But yeah, it's really sparse on my hackle wraps. And then that tail's just a little bit too webby, but I'm gonna have to live with it. But there you have your Quill Gordon dry fly. Pretty simple pattern, one that you definitely want to have, you know, Midwest to the East Coast. I mean, it'll even fool some fish out here for, you know, a Baetis or something like that. Probably not a Baetis, I don't know. Maybe, depending on, yeah, I could potentially even go for a March Brown. I mean, they fish purple flies, so, I mean, whatever. I mean, it'll probably pass for a March Brown. But any questions or comments on this one, leave them with me. I'll get back to you. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll catch you on the next fly.